Hello, and welcome to superLied. Welcome to superLied.
Hello. Hello, and welcome Hello, and welcome to superLied. Hello, and welcome to superLied. Hello.
Hello, and welcome to superLied. Welcome to superLied. superLied is a flexible, extensible, eminently live, codable tool for creating multimedia, intermedia, expanded field, call it what you will, poetry with SuperCollider. If you're not familiar with SuperCollider, or if you don't have SuperCollider set up on your machine, you can do that at supercollider.github.io, and they've got some instructions and some downloads there for Mac OS, Windows, and Linux. Once you do have SuperCollider set up, you can get superLied from my GitHub, William T. Hazard, in a repo called superLied. There you will find two files, two folders, README with some pretty bare bones documentation that I'm hoping to get a little more fleshed out soon, but this is what's there at the moment. Our two folders, samples, which includes the drum samples that I was just using, as well as some other samples to get you started, though of course you can replace those and use whatever samples you like. But superLied.scd, which is our main SuperCollider document, will be looking for samples in this folder. So you'll need to have that folder saved in the same directory as the superLied.scd file. So it should look like this. I keep my SC, my SuperCollider docs, in a folder on my desktop. I've got superLied.scd here, and my samples folder right there. This classes folder will need to be saved in your SuperCollider extensions. If you don't know where to find those, then from the SuperCollider IDE, you can navigate to File, Open User Support Directory, and that'll take you to where your extensions are stored. And you can just save those .sc files in your extensions folder. One-Shot, Ringer, SynSyn, and TriSyn. These are a sampler, one-shot sampler for drum sounds, and 3 synth voices that superLied uses. So like it says here, superLied turns text into music. Anyone familiar with CrayonLied or Schicksalslied for the Monum Crow and Norns, respectively, will be familiar with this sort of lead concept that is extended into superLied. We have a text entry field down here where we can enter text. superLied keeps track of what we've entered previously, and we can recall previously entered text with this top row of buttons. If we press this first one, there's our D. It'll flash there momentarily to sort of show us what we've selected, and then we can send that to synths or samplers. So we've got synths that we can turn on and off in this row here. Samples here, more samples here, and percussive one-shot samples down here. These last 3 buttons on the bottom row, this one on the bottom right turns the input audio signal on and off. So it can turn my mic off right now. If I do that, you'll see the scope here go away completely, or pretty much completely. There's maybe a little noise from my audio interface. And when we turn it back on, there's my mic signal again. These other 2 buttons incorporate the Carter's delay super collider script into superLied. This button my cursor is hovering over now records our input audio into the buffer that Carter's delay is reading from, and this button next to it turns the audio from Carter's delay on and off. So we can record some stuff into that buffer, or recording, and momentarily we should hear it. And there it is. Into that buffer. And now we can still play, but not be recording more audio into the buffer. And of course, if we want to turn it off, we can do that, and it goes away. This bottom row is not affected by the input text. The other rows we can send lines to with the button immediately below the on-off toggle. So we can toggle a synth voice on here. And we hear it come in. It's playing our D right now. We can bring it up in pitch by changing our D to an E. And we've sent that to the synth with the button below it. And we hear the pitch change. We can also, of course, input multiple letters. That's important for poems and stuff. And it will iterate through those letters. Each of these voices has each of these synths has a voice polyphony, so we'll hear the voices sort of ring out over each other a bit. There might be some voice stealing if it gets above 8 at a time. But we can hear it going through those letters and changing pitch. It's a little easier to hear on a voice that changes a little more quickly. Like this one. You can hear it iterating quite quickly through those letters. One major difference from crayon-Lied and Schicksalslied is that in those scripts, the input text is determining both pitch and timing of all note events. And that's not necessarily the case in superLied. As you could hear with this voice, our timing is consistent, but our pitch is changing in accordance with the text. And if we change our text and send it to that voice, we hear the pitch change, but the timing does not change. There are other voices for which both pitch and timing are influenced by the text. Those are mostly over here on the left side, the way that it's set up right now. So you can change that, and we'll talk about how to do that. And here we have something that sounds a little more like something folks familiar with Schicksalslied will be familiar with. It's a little less rhythmic, and it's going to change when we enter different text. Like superLied, superLied can also cut up samples using that input text. So we can take mid and send that to a sampler.
That uneven across note build what we call
And we can hear it iterating through those ASCII values from the user input string to find different playhead positions within that audio file.
That uneven across note
Navigating playhead positions and changing rate are decoupled in superLied. So the toggle right next to this one is going to determine rate. And we can send it a different line than the one that is determining playhead position. So let's send way to determine the rate. And we can hear it going through that W-A-Y.
That uneven across build what we call house.
From the W, which is pretty quick, to the A, which is slower, and the Y, which is also pretty quick. X should take it back to a rate of 1.
All we know, water seeks its own level. That uneven across build what we call house.
And there we are.
Really just twigs, debris build.
There are more samples down here and in that line X in pretty much the same way as these two. These are all arranged in pairs. Playhead position rate, etc. Knobs correspond to toggles, basically. There are primary and secondary controls for each of these. So for example, for this synth sound, we have a volume control, and the primary control for all of the synths and samplers is a volume control. So we can turn that down and we can hear it quiet down. In this case, our secondary control is an FM index. And if we take that further away from the midpoint, we'll be able to hear that change as well. If we bring it closer to the midpoint, our sort of depth of frequency modulation is going to get pretty close to nothing. Our hardware buttons can be replaced with a hardware Monom Grid 128 or Grid 1. If you've got the Monom SC library installed and have a hardware grid and want to use it, you can plug that into your computer and the soft grid will disappear and your hardware grid will be illuminated in a way that sort of corresponds. So every other row with these momentary buttons will be illuminated and the toggles will light up when you press them. The knobs can be replaced with a MIDI fighter twister. The twister is arranged in sort of banks of 4x4. So it's not exactly a one-to-one thing with the way that these soft knobs are arranged. Essentially, row 1 corresponds to bank 1, row 2 to bank 2, row 3 to bank 3, etc. And these bottom 4 rows are shift encoders for that secondary function. So bank 1 shift encoders, bank 2 shift encoders, etc. Another thing that sort of differentiates superLied from previous lead scripts is the opportunity for live coding. You can sort of rebuild the plane while it's flying. To illustrate what I mean by that, I'll pull up this GUI side by side with the superLied.scd document. And the GUI is sort of designed with this kind of use case in mind. And if we scroll down to where our sequences are stored in the superLied.scd document, which at the time of this video corresponds to line 1179, we can see this is marked out in comments with sequences. Start here. Bank 1, that corresponds to our first row of toggles here. We can see sound 0 corresponds to this one, sound 1 corresponds to this one, etc., etc. So let's say we're using our pinged resonant filter sound here, and we want it to do something a little more interesting. Right now it's triggering every 1.5 beats, which creates that kind of sense of rhythmic surprise when we bring in the kick snare. But let's say we want to change that. So we go down to 15. This is the 16th button if we're counting from 1, but the 15th if we're counting from 0, which we are. So we go down to sound 15, and the timing is being determined by DERs here. We can see it's 1.5. So let's change that to 1.5 and then 0.5 and then 1. That should be a little more interesting. And if we execute just these lines by highlighting them and pressing Shift Enter, that will register the change. And say we don't like that as much as we thought we did or would. Let's change it back. And of course we can change anything about this sequence. We can see right now the pitch is being determined by B, which is our input text, but we could change that to just a constant pitch, or we could sequence a series of pitches that we want that are in no way linked to the text. So we could have some things influenced by the text and others not. Just to illustrate, let's have it post something to SuperCollider's REPL here. Each time it plays a note, it's going to write playing to the REPL. Now if we highlight this whole code chunk here and hit Shift Enter, that change takes effect. And of course you can do that for all of your synth sounds and all of your samplers and all of your drum sounds. There's quite a bit to explore. I'm sure there are also bugs to be found, improvements to be made, new territory to discover. Pull requests are certainly welcome. Bug reports are welcome too. As are tracks. Anything that you make, send it to me. Tag me in it. I want to hear it. I'm really excited to hear what you make with this, and to read what you make with this, and to see what you make with this. Yeah, I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you have a lot of fun with it. And thanks for being interested in superLied. Enjoy.